Hello my friend. In this video you will learn about mind-bending archaeology of Knossos on the island of Crete. My name is Veronica Winters. I'm a visionary artist, book author. Welcome to my studio. The palace of Minos in Knossos is located on the outskirts of town Heraklion on the island of Crete. I think the most amazing thing about Knossos is its unusual architectural design. Unlike other palaces in the history of humanity, where royalty separated itself to live and govern in modern luxury, the palace of Minos held many administrative, religious, entertaining and ceremonial functions inside it. The labyrinth-like structure of the palace boasts one of Greek myths about Theseus, prince of Athens, who slayed the Minotaur. The Minotaur was a half-bull, half-man who lived imprisoned in a labyrinth built by King Minos, father of Ariadne. Ariadne fell in love with Theseus. It's believed that Daedalus was the architect of the labyrinth and the palace. He advised Ariadne to give a threat to Theseus to find his way back from the labyrinth. To get to the palace of Minos, we used a public bus and bought a ticket in a local market shop. Greeks speak English very well and can help you navigate the purchase of tickets. The archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans did the majority of excavations in Knossos in the early 20th century. He named this ancient culture Minoan in accordance with ancient Greek myths that referenced King Minos ruling in the area. Let's look at the prehistoric Crete. Crete was situated at the crossroads of the sea routes linking three continents, Asia, Africa and Europe. And so the Minoan world preceded by a lengthy development starting from the birth of Neolithic communities around 7000 BCE. During the Bronze Age, Cretan culture had experienced constant enrichment and renewal through interactive communication with other Aegean civilizations, mainly Egypt and the East. This interaction created favorable conditions for the emergence of the first great palatial civilization in Europe. The ruling elites and classes rose to wealth and power through control of production and trade. By 2000 BC, complex urban centers like Knossos and Phaistos emerged, boasting multi-story palaces. These were large cities with a palace center. The palace became the center of authority and residence of the court officials, and it functioned as the seat of a complex administrative bureaucracy, including gathering and processing of goods. Social structures and relationships got consolidated through secular and religious palace rituals. Art of the Minoan civilization. All forms of art developed and reached its peak on the island. Large wall paintings, miniatures, silk carving, jewelry making, goldsmithing, metalwork, stone carving, and vase painting. Increased demand for luxury and status items, which were also exported off Crete, led to the development of massive import of raw materials such as gold, ivory, silver, copper, and semi-precious stones. Minoan seafarers dominated the Aegean Sea and the East Mediterranean, trading raw materials and precious art. Colonies, ports, and stations of Minoan character throughout the Aegean became bases for trade overseas, while Minoan painters decorated palaces in Egypt and the East. This bull was made around 1600 BCE. Carved with great precision, the bull is a vessel used for libations at the palace. Here's the Minon ring of King Minos, and it was made around 1450 BCE. It gives a good overview of the religious iconography of the Minoans. Here, the goddess passes through three natural elements, air, land, and sea, which becomes a symbolic unification of the mortal world. The ring's story depicts Minoan rule and power over land and sea. So what happened to the Minoan civilization? Decline of the Minoans happened around 1450 BCE. Natural disasters that shocked the Minon world, such as the earthquake and the cataclysmic eruption of the volcano, did not cause its complete decline. It's believed that the Minon civilization collapsed probably due to some internal causes. Main Minon centers and palaces got destroyed with the exception of Knossos. As the Minon influence waned, the mainland Mycenaean Greeks gained prominence, and Mycenaean culture absorbed some Minon elements, forming a hybrid civilization that lasted until around 1100 BCE. And I did a separate video about the Mycenaean culture. You can find it on my channel. New dynasties got established first at Knossos around 1450 BC, and then in other places on the island. They controlled the complex bureaucracy using Mycenaean script, the first form of Greek writing. The gradual arrival of tribes from central Greece led to permanent incorporation of Crete in the cultural and political structures of the Greek world at the turn of the 2nd century BC. The emergence of palatial societies on Crete. Elaborate building complexes known as the first or old palaces were established at the center of large towns, which emerged in the beginning of the 2nd century BC. Part of these early complexes buried under new palaces built atop have been identified and partially excavated at Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Petras. They include dining areas, large assembly and ceremonial halls, storerooms, and central court. Gold, luxury weapons, scepters of authority, and precious jewelry also function symbolically, stressing the social status, power, and prestige of the palatial elite. Writing was adopted to record goods, and complex sealing methods were developed to ensure conformity of commercial transactions with the guarantee of the palatial administration. Society was structured hierarchically with different skills and activities. In the times of great prosperity, Minon ceramic art reached its peak. The found objects of exceptional quality were produced in specialized workshops for the use of the ruling and prosperous urban class in the palace and town of Knossos. Stone lamps and vessels with elaborate relief decoration, bronze vessels, and vessels with raised pictorial compositions or inlaid and covered in fine gold leaves served practical and ceremonial purpose. The dark and light decoration dominated local pottery. This is the pottery of so-called spatial palatial tradition produced by palatial workshops, mainly at Knossos. These elegant vases are decorated with geometrical and stylized motifs and with nature and sea-inspired subjects named the floral style and the marine style. Exquisite vases were created by gifted artists. Beautiful vessels found in the Phaistos Palace are excellent examples of the so-called Kamaris ware, a colorful decorative style that's common for the palatial ceramic production during the First Palaces period. Decorations on these vases show similarities in painted motifs like the checkerboard, spirals, and rocks. The vases were probably the products of one workshop that could have been made as a custom dinner set for dinners and ceremonies of the ruling class at the Phaistos Palace. Among the vessels, we can see a large crater standing on a high foot that could have been the vessel for mixing and drinking wine in large quantities. The offering of wine to a deity and group consumption of wine at dinner seem to be central to secular and religious rituals in the communities of prehistoric Crete. Also, the Minoans of Crete were pioneers in the production of the famous purple dye, known today as Tyrian purple. The Minoans obtained the dye from Murex sea snails. Archaeological evidence suggests Minon production dates back to 2000 BC. Discoveries of large quantities of crushed Murex shells at sites on Crete point to dedicated dye production facilities. And the Minon purple dye likely possessed the same rich, deep color and remarkable light fastness or resistance to fading that made Tyrian purple so valuable. The extraction process was laborious, involving the collection and processing of vast numbers of sea snails. The resulting dye was incredibly expensive, and on purple likely colored textiles and other luxury items, signifying wealth and status. It's interesting to note that the Minoans may have been the true innovators behind this remarkable ancient technology. Now let's look at the palace of Minos in Knossos in greater detail. I must mention that most of this information comes from the descriptions I photographed in the museum and around the site. If you enjoy listening to this podcast, please rate it. It really helps others to discover this show. Thank you so very much. The Palace of Knossos is the largest palace on the island of Crete. The first palace was built around 1900 BCE, which is Old Palace period. This first palace got destroyed around 1700 BC, and the new palace was built in its place, which is New Palace period. With the exception of some later additions, Sir Evans uncovered and restored its ruins. So today you see partially restored the palace of a new period. The new palace consisted of different buildings surrounding the central court. There were multiple entrances. The west wing included shrines, official halls, and extensive storage areas, and the east wing, the royal apartments and workshops. There were storage rooms and other areas to the north and south. The palace displays a great variety of architectural features. Multi-story buildings had flat roofs on different levels. The embellishments included stone horns and multicolored surfaces. The Minoans used a variety of materials on the floor and wooden columns and gypsum slabs on walls and construction. Polychrome, plaster, and wall paintings contributed to room decorations. Minoan architects broke new ground in both planning and construction techniques of new buildings. They developed the palaces and buildings with palatial features, and the palace in Knossos became the epitome of Minoan architecture. The Minoans invented very strange and interesting partitions and light wells, offering various combinations of circulation, lighting, and ventilation. And another pioneering invention is the addition of wooden columns to the facades, forming colonnades and balconies looking onto the great courts. And the shape of these columns is strange. It doesn't look like the ones that we see in later Greek period. And the crowning achievement of the design is the grand staircase of Knossos, with its 2 flights of stairs supported by columns on each floor. A dense grid of timber frames ensured the construction stability. The Minoans used raised stone and painted plaster. Its architectural complexity, maze-like interior, shifts of light and shade, gave rise to the myth of the Minon labyrinth. Besides the palace itself, elements of palatial and urban architecture are depicted in wall paintings, clay models, and the plaques of the town mosaic. And the palace appears to have been the center of political, economic, and religious authority. The Palace of Knossos continued its use after the 1450 BCE. Even when the rest of the Cretan palaces were already destroyed, most experts believe that the new inhabitants came from the Mycenaean Greek mainland and settled in this palace thanks to the discovery of the Mycenaean archive of Linear B script. It remains unclear when the palace ceased to function. The significance of its former glory got lost after the 1380 BCE. Many parts of this palace were reconstructed. The palace was decorated with different frescoes. You can see that these pictures feature people and nature, as well as the religious rituals. I think one of the most interesting elements is the figure of 8 shields fresco. The fresco with figure of 8 shields repeated in a stylized row decorated the walls of the grand staircase leading to the official quarters of the palace. The fresco depicts the actual shields suspended on walls. They were made of either a wooden or metallic framework covered with ox hide, represented by the dabbed surface. The shield may have represented the military power of the king living in Knossos. The Ladies in Blue fresco is a partial composition depicting wealthy women in dresses and lavish jewelry set against blue background. Their adornment was restored based on a similar fresco fragment. Despite its fragmentary condition, the wall painting gives a sense of opulence and prosperity of the royal court. The Griffin's fresco is done in high relief, and teethed columns decorated the great east hall of the Palace of Knossos. The Prince of the Lilies is a high-relief fresco of a large mural. Its emblematic image of Minon, Crete. Sir Evans thought that this figure was the ruler of Knossos, the priest king, but other archaeologists don't agree with this statement. And here's a fresco with the white lilies. It's part of a large mural composition that decorated the first floor of the mansion in Knossos. This fresco is typical of the Minoan culture, where the artists create a concave shape for stems and flowers to fill it in with white paint. And finally, wall paintings of the throne room deserve some attention. Again, it was restored. They depict griffins and palm tree. The paintings were placed next to the throne on the wall opposite the entrance of the room, and these fragments enable the reconstruction of the entire scene, full of symbolic connotations related to the religious and ceremonial use of the room. The real alabaster throne is integrated in a riverside landscape. Palm trees, symbolizing the regenerative powers of nature, spring from the base of the throne. The griffins flanking the throne have no wings, thus interpreted as the permanent guardians of the authority symbolized by the throne itself. I have a separate video about the Mycenaean culture where I explore the difference between the linear A and B texts. Here, I'd like to say that around 3,400 clay tablets were found inscribed in linear B script from the Palace of Knossos, form part of the archives maintained by the new dynasty, which established itself at the palace following the destruction of most Minoan political centers in 1450 BC. In contrast to the preceding linear A text, which recorded the unknown language of the Minoans, the tablets written in linear B script date back to 1425 BCE. They are the earliest known texts written in Greek. These are temporary lists of accounts, recordings of goods, military equipment, palace officials, dependents, and ritual offerings. They were incised into wet clay by 100 different scribes. Linear B texts got preserved by accident as they got baked in the fire that destroyed the palace. And brief descriptions are also found on ceilings, lumps of clay stamped with seal imprints and used to label goods. The Minon Religion and the World of the Dead. Here you can see the snake goddess found in the palace in Knossos, which dates back to 1650 BC. These are the most important cult objects from the Knossos temple repositories. The name comes from the snakes held by the figures. These snakes symbolize the character of the goddess cult, and feline creature on her head suggests her dominion over the wildlife. Both goddesses wear expensive dresses, and large nude chest symbolizes the female fertility or the goddess of nature. Higher triada sarcophagus. The limestone sarcophagus depicts ritual ceremonies in honor of the dead and transcendental scenes associated with the afterlife beliefs. The scenes are frescoes painted on plaster, and you can see a depiction of a dead man on one alongside of the sarcophagus. He is receiving offerings of a boat and animals. On the left, priestesses hold a lyre and pour libations into a bucket set between the columns with double axes. Birds sit on the axis, symbolizing the deity's presence. Another long side depicts a bull's sacrifice. This sarcophagus was found in a rectangular built tomb and belonged to a ruler who was splendidly honored after his death by the palatial priesthood and the gods on earth and in heavens. Clay larynx imitate the wooden coffins. There are two types of the coffins. The first one is in the shape of a wooden chest with a goblet lid. The second one resembles a bathtub. The deceased were placed in a fetal position, perhaps signifying the symbolic return to the beginning of life in the womb. Iconographic themes are mostly inspired by the plant, animal, and marine worlds. They were rendered schematically without a narrative cohesion. The obvious decorative aim of the motifs conceals a clear symbolic significance. These themes, isolated or in compositions, depict an abstracted version of the Minon paradise. This other world of peace and eternal spring is indicated by trees, plants, birds, and animals. The chariot and ship depicted on two larynx show available transportation for a long journey over land and sea. Occasionally divine figures appear in the gardens of paradise in attributes of prayer or about to be enthroned, an image conveying the idea of the last judgment. Five figures with upraised arms, the goddesses, were found in the post-palatial settlement at Crete. They have attached bird symbols and horns of consecration on their heads. They were excavated from different parts of the settlement, indicating the cult activities took place throughout the site. Open-air cult existed at some sanctuaries and in caves. Worshippers presented the deity with praying human figurines. Expertly crafted offerings for worship made precious materials such as bronze figurines, gold, silver, and bronze artifacts, seals, jewelry, tablets, and stone vases all became the display of a person's wealth. Such offerings are found in cult assemblages placed alongside numerous human and animal clay figurines. The Minoans used religious symbols in depictions of religious significance or to mark the sanctity of space and buildings in which they performed the cult acts. The emblematic symbol of the Minon religion, the double axe, is probably derived from the real axe used to slay the sacrificial bull. Horns of consecration were also a sacred symbol, perhaps a schematic representation of the horns of the bull, the sacred cult animal. The sacral knot was made of cloth and served as a symbol of protection. These include the female figures with upraised arms holding double axes and flowers, double axes with indented edges, horns of consecration, and a disc with astral symbols. Sculpture. Greek art of the archaic period around 7th-6th century BC is marked by the development of monumental sculpture, namely the creation of life-size and over-life-size statues in stone. Crete occupies a prominent position in the history of daedalic sculpture of the 7th century BC, named after Daedalus, the legendary craftsman and sculptor. Following geometric period conventions for rendering the human features of the face and body, the archaic sculpture imprints human figures frontally. Such statues, mainly the female ones, come from several areas on Crete. Most Cretan statues were life-size, made of local Cretan limestone. And the island of Crete pioneers the development of architectural sculpture, mostly used in the embellishment of temples and public buildings with statues and carved in relief representations. At the end of the 6th century BC, the gravestones done in relief appear on the island of Crete. These gravestones mark the tombs of the dead, which were modeled after the Attic prototypes. Later on, the production on Crete decreases for political and social reasons. Classical sculpture arises around 5th and 4th century BC. It's represented by relatively few works of art showing Attic and Cycladic artistic influences. A rich artistic tradition of the island, however, has significant impact on ancient Greek art. Famous statues and architecture of the Hellenic world are attributed to two Cretan sculptors who were pupils of Daedalus. An important aspect of Minoan public life were organized spectacles at which trained athletes engaged in contests of strength, endurance, and skill. There were several very popular but dangerous contests: bull leaping, bull hunting, and boar hunting. Minoans also had wrestling, boxing, foot racing, chariot racing, and other sport games. The most spectacular Minoan acrobatic sport was bull leaping. Young athletes made a dangerous leap over the horns and back of a charging bull. Athletes of both sexes participated in this sport and recorded in the color of their skin, dark for men and white for women. The Minoans cultivated the spirit of competition and excellence in sport that was later adopted by the ancient Greeks in the Olympic Games. I talk about the origins of the Olympic Games in my video about ancient cult center of Delphi. I'd like to mention a few beautiful places to see in Heraklion. You can pass it by. The famous one is the Morosini Fountain in the center of town. The area around the Venetian fortress is beautiful. You can look at turquoise water in the city's harbor. But the most interesting is the Aegeus Minos Cathedral. It was built in late 19th century and it's dedicated to Saint Minos who lived around 285 AD. And this is a patron saint of Heraklion, and he is depicted on a silver icon inside the church. And the interior space is just so beautiful. It features colorful Byzantine-style murals and incredible chandeliers decorated with saints, double eagle, and peacock designs. The stained glass windows cast beautiful light on the walls and floor. So in conclusion, I hope you got interested in visiting Heraclean Greece to discover Knossos, the palace and place of the Minoan civilization on your own terms. As a reminder, the majority of this information comes from the museums on Crete. You'll find all the links below this video. If you have a question, please leave it in the comments. That's how I can see the question. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to this channel, like and share this video. This is really important. I'm not just saying that. If you like it, please share it. Check out veronicasart.com to see new work or subscribe. I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.